Now to our topic of today, which is the third session, which is perception versus perspective, an innovative approach to critical thinking. And to tell you more about this, we have Patricia Slawinska, who is joining us from Hong Kong. She is the founder of RempowerTech and Perspectiviz, which focuses on mentoring female entrepreneurs and embracing personal development at workplace. Patricia is also a proud member of the Women in Tech group in Hong Kong and a leading not-for-profit HealthTech Network. Patricia, welcome to Women Empowerment Forum Global 2020.
Thank you, Nira. Thank you so much for the invitation as well on this panel. And I can say I've heard so many amazing speakers, and I'm happy actually that Gay's speech is already tapping into what I want to discuss. So very good.
Exactly. Because she was just talking about perception. Now, I want to understand from you, what is the difference between perception and perspective?
Great. For this, I would like actually to share with you as well my screen. If you can enable my screen, or you can actually start my screen. I have the message that the hosts disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, yep, okay, I think it should work. Yeah, is it working now?
Let me see. Good. Okay. Yes, perfect. It is. Thank you so much. Wonderful. So.
Okay, you'll have to do full screen.
Exactly. Can you see it?
Yep.
Perfect. Wonderful. So today in my speech, I wanted actually to touch base on something that is very important for all the entrepreneurs, because we often see that entrepreneurs are very enthusiastic, have brilliant ideas, are very creative, are very innovative. And then at the end, somewhere along the ride, it goes wrong, or there are appearing some challenges. And to your question, what is actually the difference between perception and perspective? Sounds sometimes similar, but there is a huge difference. And this is what I want to share. So here is a beautiful image, which I always find very intriguing, because this was always something that everyone has already seen in their life. A perspective is basically our point of view, how we see something, from which perspective we can see it, from which angle we can see it, where a perception is our interpretation. And the interpretation mostly of the times is based on experience, something that we have encountered, something that is similar to us. Now, just as an exercise for everyone that is joining today's speech and today's forum, there is something like this, that an objective truth doesn't exist. So everyone who has a left brain more dominant sees the color on this particular shoe is gray and green. And for everyone who has actually a more right brain dominant, they see pink and white. Nira, what do you see?
I see green and I see gray.
Okay, so your left brain is more dominant than your right. Great. Here is my favorite picture, actually. If you look at it, it's very funny, because you can see as well that basically the perspective is, if you look on the left side, you can be immediately offended. On the right side, you see that he's actually pointing only 3 fingers. There's nothing wrong. However, with the perception, and this is our interpretation. So for instance, here's a message that someone went on a date, had a date, puts an emoji, and suddenly the other party is saying, oops, I'm sorry it went so bad. Let's hear the stories later. The person doesn't know what is happening. Why is this? Because different phones have different emojis. Did you know that?
Yes, yes, you're right. Yes.
And I'm sure that a lot of people have encountered this kind of situations already where they were like, that's why it is so important nowadays, especially when we are experiencing virtual working or remotely working, that we know how we communicate, what kind of emojis we are using, what kind of language, what kind of words we are using. Very important for our interpretation. Saying as well that there is actually a very different view to one truth. So everything from every point of view, from every angle can be seen differently. And it's important to take this in consideration. Why is it important? Well, because it delivers us a lot of different kind of perspectives, perceptions, and so on. So why critical thinking skills are so important for entrepreneurs? Well, critical thinking is actually reflective thinking. This means that we are making a decision on what to believe or what to do. But this requires as well a lot of self-discipline. It requires as well a lot of self-study. It requires a lot of self-motivation just to take a step back from our own creativity, from our own imagination. So we have a good perspective. Because as you could see in the previous slides, you've seen as well that there are situations that something, the same event, can be very differently interpreted by different people. What is actually the critical thinking delivering us? And this is a very important part because the benefits of critical thinking mean that we have an open mind. This means we think of things that no one else has considered before, or we learn how to solve an important issue. We actually master as well ability to analyze things first before we action upon it. Communication, a very important part, especially nowadays when we have the remote working part, or when we are actually communicating on the phone, people don't see your face, or when we are communicating on emails and people do not know what kind of expressions you have behind these words. So it is showing and indicating a strong written and oral skill. And it means as well that we know what kind of questions we have to ask. And this is a very interesting perspective because the questions, something I've learned as well in my expertise and in my business, when I have been working with clients, the biggest, challenge was that my clients didn't know how to ask the right questions. They knew where they wanted to be. They knew what the end result was, but they didn't know how to get there, and therefore they didn't know what kind of questions they have to ask. So one tip that I can definitely advise is if you are writing to someone and you are, I don't know, requesting something, ask yourself, what is it that you need? Who is your target group? And once you think about it, who is your target group? What exactly is it that you need? Then you can actually formulate the question in a way that they will give you exactly what you need. And last but not least, it is the organization. So being able to structure a plan of action with clear goals and deadlines, which is so important because having a vision and having an amazing product or service is unfortunately not everything. We need to be able to organize it. We need to be able to be clear as well in our expectations, where we are heading. Why? Because the people that we are working with need to have not only the perspective, but understand our perception. And this is very important.
Patricia, I have a question for you here. So we're talking about critical thinking, right? How's that sort of related to perception and perspective at the same time? And as an entrepreneur, how is critical thinking important for me?
Well, and this is a very good question, because critical thinking is so important to entrepreneurs, because it is actually, it is processing the information before we decide on actioning our next steps. And processing your thoughts actually help you to make reasonable choices and consider the big picture actually. So the perspective that we need to have. But the perspective, as you have seen, there is not one objective truth, because as you've mentioned, one can see a gray and green shoe and the other person can see a pink and a white shoe. And that's why it is so important basically to take this in consideration in any business decisions that you are making. So therefore, if one can think critically, or with different words, reflect, it means that this person can actually make as well better choices, and it can actually conceptualize, analyze, and observe and evaluate. And this is the most important part. So what are the 6 steps of critical thinking? Well, the first one is the knowledge. Know what you're talking about. The second step is comprehension. Understand where you are coming from and understand what all the data, all the information that you have in front of you can do. Next, analyze. So take it from all the perspectives, how it can be monetized, for instance. That's why I love data monetization, basically, because there are so many possibilities in it. Next step is application. So how can you apply those connection of the dots? And the most important thing is, we as entrepreneurs, we can get very quickly enthusiastic about some ideas. But if you are starting to overwhelm yourself and there are too many ideas that you want to execute, it will be very difficult to have one global perspective and understand the clients and their needs. Because if it's overwhelming already you, well, the clients will be super overwhelmed in this case. Good. Next one is synthesize, and then at the end, take action. What are the benefits of thinking critically? So, Nira, you had at the end of Gail's speech, there was actually a question, how to deal with the negative feedback as well.
Correct.
And what is the negative feedback? She was as well talking about the growth mindset. And this is my favorite topic. It is somehow, it is a cliche because everyone is talking about, oh, growth mindset. What is it, growth mindset? But on the other side, you know, it is interesting because, especially about the negative feedback. Did you know that actually there are big companies, big corporates that have implemented as well negative feedback, like Google, and they have implemented a reward for failures, for something that didn't work out. Why? Because it is a process in learning, or a learning process, that they can become better. So being able to critically observe our ideas before acting on them allows us to have all the options on the table. This means the benefits are like new questions. We will get actually to the questions later as well. What kind of questions can arise when you want to think critically? Because let's be honest, I mean, thinking critically sounds already slightly negative. And yeah, it is sometimes, because you can see it as our accountability body somehow, someone that will actually check if this is the right way, the right action you want to go to. It helps us as well to make the best decisions, because it allows us to pause and think how we can combine everything. It allows us as well to explore and research. It gives us, as we have been talking about, the perspective and the perception, which gives us a bigger picture. It allows us to see on our own products and our own services from the position of the client, or from the position of our partners, or from our potential new clients. This gives a huge benefit in any negotiations. So once someone goes into a negotiation phase, they know immediately already what the other person will see, what is their benefit in it, what's in it for them. And once you understand it, you know exactly how to deal with it. That's the beauty of critical thinking. And last but not least, as Gail mentioned as well, growth mindset, because it is actually a great benefit for any entrepreneur for decision making, just to make good decisions, basically. And then we have actually,
Patricia, we've got a question, which I thought maybe we could just address it now.
perfect.
The question is, what kind of questions are shaped by critical thinking?
Wonderful. And this is actually what was actually already my next slide. So very well. We have actually different kinds of questions, and please take a picture of the slides, or I don't know, write some of the questions down, because this helps a lot, and it has helped me as well in my business very often. So,
Patricia, would it be okay if we actually share these afterwards?
of course, yes, please.
Fantastic. So everybody, just so you know, we'll share all of Patricia's slide after this event. So if you can still take your notes, but don't worry about writing everything down, because we will share. Thank you, Patricia, for that.
Wonderful, of course. So basically, we have for different kinds of areas that we want to improve. Is it, for instance, for the clarity? One can ask, could you illustrate what you mean? So for instance, what very often happens is that entrepreneurs, or even we as people, you don't have to be an entrepreneur for that, but we make very often some assumptions. So someone says something, gives us a piece of information, which makes us assume that we already know what's behind it. Why? Because we have experienced it already, a similar situation before in a different event, or because we assume that we know what the other person has in mind. Well, sometimes it's better to ask even these questions, like, could you give me an example of what you mean? Or could you illustrate what you mean? Could you elaborate? Why are these questions important? Not only to have a good picture or understanding of a situation, of what your partner or the other person wants to say in it, but it is as well important because it gives you time to think, what are the next steps? What do you want to say further in the whole conversation or negotiation? And then precision. Could you be more exact? Or could you give me a specific example? I love these kind of questions because we know how someone sees a certain topic or a certain product or a certain service. Now, another one is the relevance. How does this help us? And there is nothing wrong in asking a question as an entrepreneur if this answers the question, or how does the thing, what you are saying, relates to the problem, or how can it help us? Because maybe sometimes there are some other ideas that you haven't thought of, and it's totally fine. Sometimes it can be as well a fairness, like, is my purpose fair in this situation? Am I considering the thinking of others? Well, and there are many more other examples, and as we will share the slides with you, I'm sure that you have access to all of the slides then as well. Does that answer your question, Mira?
That was a question that somebody had asked, so I hope their question is answered. And I'm sure we will, once they actually have this in front of them and they're using it for a particular problem, this would be very helpful. Thank you.
Wonderful. Perfect. Good. Critical thinking leads to a growth mindset, and something that Gail already has been talking about. So what are the traits of someone that thinks critically? Well, it enables a certain curiosity, compassion. Compassion is not the same as empathy. And we need to remember that, because compassion can give you, without being emotionally involved in someone's shoes, it gives you the possibility to have an understanding of someone's perception, how they see a particular event. It gives us awareness, or it gives us as well an objectivity and reflective capacity. Now, steps for building a growth mindset. And I know it's actually what we touched based already on it before, especially about the reward failure. Well, the growth mindset culture is used in many businesses and many corporations, especially corporations. So I gave here as well some examples of the corporations where it is used. The most important, and I like that a lot, because I have as well experience of working for corporates for more than 10 years. And I wish I knew that before, to be honest, because I think that my executive management skills would have been better if I have applied those steps. And actually, well, I think I would be more successful, definitely more successful and more profitable as well. So the reward failure, as we as we mentioned already before, it is amazing how Google is, for instance, encouraging the learning through failures. So if someone makes a mistake, they are celebrating that a person or a group has made a mistake. Why? Because it helps them to see what could they have done better. I'm not saying that we have to make mistakes all the time and that you have to encourage every single mistake, far from that, but that you have a global perspective on that. Good. Enable as well, if you're working with employees, if you have employees or you have a business partner that you're working with, enable a safe feedback. So turn it into something that is on a consistent base, like every week or every 2 weeks, that you can give each other a safe feedback. Something that I've learned as well is it always sounds better, the feedback, if you say it with the I communication form rather than the you communication form. So I feel that we can do this and this and this. How do you see that? How do you relate to this? Another thing is planned growth mindsets managers across different levels. Well, if you are a small business, of course, that is not relevant, but someone that can be actually with you to have a brainstorm session, have this mindset of how can we transform it, how can we be more innovative, is already a huge benefit. Now, the agile problem solving, well, that is basically takes a lot of critical thinking skills to be adaptive to the situation, to the current situation, and so on. Flattened hierarchy, big fan of this, just because of the fact that if everything happens with respect with your employers or with your employees or with your business partner, well, then it is much easier to immediately raise a challenge or a problem. Because if you don't feel comfortable saying something, or you're afraid, or someone else is afraid, it will take time till you actually see and realize that there was a problem in the first place. And this can have much bigger consequences than initially it was supposed to have. Learning culture, absolutely keep educating yourself all the time, because this helps you to keep a broader perspective as well. I will go, because of the time, I will actually jump slightly faster right now, because the workplace applications, once you request the presentation, you will see it as well, where it will help you, either if it is in the developing a business acumen, or it helps you as well proving the operational performance. Yes, a lot in the slide is very targeted on corporates, but I truly believe as well that for a normal entrepreneur, a small medium enterprise entrepreneur, this can be very helpful. Summary. So we have discussed the critical thinking skills, finding solutions to problems, the growth mindset to improve ourselves, the perspective to have a bigger picture on everything, and the perception to have a better understanding of our position, but as well of someone else's position. And the most important part, take action. So thank you so much. And yeah, it's time for change, I would say, with critical thinking skills.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much. And of course, there's a lot of critical thinking that we need to do with all the information that you've given us. And for everybody, again, we have shared Patricia's details on the chat. So if you do want to find out more, do get in touch with her. And she's going to be back for the networking session, which is from 6 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time. So please do check the timing in your city before joining in. And again, once I do want to reiterate that the link for the networking session is going to be different to what you have now. So, and we've shared that and you have received that. And yes, thank you so much, Patricia. It was such a fantastic talk, and we loved having you.
Thank you so much.